Hello and welcome to the Emerging Purpose Podcast with me, Greg Donaldson. This is episode 5 with Allan Frater. So I've been thinking about purpose and passion, especially over this sort of Christmas period, because it's interesting, isn't it? I don't know about you, but I get this sort of feeling over Christmas that, we're sort of building up, all these to-do lists and things that we need to get for this one day, which creates so much pressure. And I guess, depending on what you're doing for Christmas or whether you've kind of opted out or whether there's no one that you can spend Christmas with, then we all have kind of different experiences. Personally, I find that this time of year is always a little bit tricky just because I don't like having to think into the future about what this perfect day is going to behold, and then ultimately it's just another day. Saying that, I did have a really lovely Christmas, and I managed to host family and cook a lovely Christmas dinner for them. But I tell you what happens to me afterwards is I get this sort of weird come down where everyone goes and then I'm sort of left, and you're in this sort of middle strange space where there's no structure, and it's kind of this sense of like it's time to rest. And I find that space quite difficult myself because I have this sort of attachment to purpose, and it's really interesting, I find, to undo that attachment and kind of go, well, what if you don't have to have any purpose, or your purpose is just to chill out, close the curtains, watch the TV, read a book, or just sleep? Because so much of the year is and so much of the way that this society is built is like on progression and purpose, and you must be moving forwards and achieving. And I've really bought into that idea, and I really sort of invite myself at this time of year to slow down and kind of maybe go out for some walks along the seafront. I live down in Brighton. I'm lucky enough to live down in Brighton, and I can just walk along the seafront and kind of be very close to the sea. And but I still feel this pull in me, this sort of strange pull to be in touch with my purpose and my passion. And I guess that's why, partly the reason why I started this podcast is to hear and learn from other people about what motivates them and how they stay in touch with their passion, and what that actually means. So I've had some really interesting conversations about that, and I'm really starting to change my relationship to what I think purpose is, and what my ego thinks purpose is to be successful in this certain way and to be thought about in this kind of way. And I just have to keep coming back to the moment and remembering that actually purpose is a little bit more of a kind of something that moves and changes, and you can't really hang your hat on it, and you can't really just have it as a kind of given that this is my purpose and this is what I'm doing, because usually that just comes with a sort of ego identification. So it's a strange old game, being able to step between the two, step between the sort of being a human being in the world who needs to, make money and make an income and have goals, and also be someone who is a spiritual being who realizes that we are all part of the one, and how to let go into that, or how to step between those two places. Anyway, let me introduce Allan Frater. So Allan Frater I met in 2012 when I was studying to be a psychotherapist at the Psychosynthesis Trust. So he works as a tutor and a trainer there. Funnily enough, I found out a little bit more about Allan in this conversation. You know, he originally graduated as a chemical engineer and he was ordained as a Buddhist. He then trained as a psychotherapist and supervisor at the Psychosynthesis Trust, and now he teaches and tutors there. He is also the author of a brilliant book called Waking Dreams, Imagination in Psychotherapy and Everyday Life. I really wanted to talk to Allan because I'd read his book, and he breaks imagination down within the book, and we kind of got into it really, and we covered some different topics. We got into wild reading, rewilding the imagination, and I suppose really you could say we kind of got into what is the imagination. We also spoke a little bit about psychosynthesis and psyche as an ecosystem. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. I must just say up front that we were recording quite a large room, so sometimes it gets a little bit echoey, and but I think it's all pretty clear. But I would have kind of preferred to have been in a smaller, more kind of padded room for the acoustics, but I hadn't really sorted that out. Anyway, it's all a lesson, it's all work in progress, and I'm sure you will enjoy this conversation with Allan Frater.
Started reading Game of Thrones.
No way, have you watched it?
Never read it. I've watched it a long time ago when it came out.
It's funny because a friend of mine recently said, have you watched Game of Thrones? And I said, no, I can't. I just can't do it. I can't invest in it. And he said, don't be stupid. Watch it.
Really?
And I took his advice. And I've just started. I'm on like fifth.
Oh, it's good fun.
5 episodes in.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, but the book. I bet the book's a bit more.
But it's been a while since I've seen it because I watched it when it came out with my friend, and you need a gap before you read the book. Yeah. So I just started that. I just thought I might get into it over Christmas. Yeah. Reading a book called Dust on the Sea about submarines. I love submarines.
So when you're reading, are you like you don't just read one book at a time. You're like, you've got a whole
That's the trick. That's the trick. If you want to read more, don't just have one book on the go. It's like different channels on the telly. You're in different moods. Yeah. So in the morning I do my non-fiction with my coffee before I walk.
As in, I see. So like if you're reading,
I've got a more non-fiction-y space in the morning.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I have 2 or 3 novels on the go. And sometimes I'll get into one and just do that, but sometimes I chop and change depending on my mood and stuff. Yeah. And that means you're always reading, you're not just like, I don't want to read, because it's just one choice. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, man. So is there what particular one are you enjoying at the moment the most? Pat Barker, the Psychosynthesis. No, that's a novel. It's the 3rd in a trilogy. She won the Booker Prize in the 90s. Yeah. The Ghost Road. It's set during the First World War. There's a psychotherapist called Will Rivers and his patient Harry Pryor. I'm not very good at remembering characters' names. Yeah, but it's really good. Shell shock and the trenches and all that early days of.
What do you love about well, if you do love, but it sounds like you do love reading.
Well, imagination. I call it wild reading.
Wild reading?
Wild reading. So after I wrote my book, my Waking Dreams book.
After you wrote your book?
After I wrote my book.
Okay, yeah.
Or as a result of writing it, I just had. And also, writing a book's like a long process, and it's kind of it's quite focused, and it's non-fiction, a lot of non-fiction reading and reflection. So I wanted to get back to fiction reading, and I realised that novels are a waking dream.
And that's the title of your book?
That's the title of my book, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And novels are a great way to develop your imagination. And because I've studied and written about waking dreams, what I'm now doing is seeing how you can enhance your reading skills and get more out of your reading. Because in the old days, and I think a lot of people get stuck because it's kind of like they're trying to find the right book.
Yeah.
But then you just go passive to the reading process, because it's an interaction between the text and the reader. And you need to bring the text alive. And if you leave all that to the text and expect it just to happen, you're going to be looking for books for a long time. So I'm really interested in how to, there's a sort of crossover from the Waking Dreams book into, wild reading.
So before we get, because I really want to talk to you about your book, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's,
We've kind of started talking in a bleak way.
Well, yeah, that's what I you know what I mean. I kind of want to get into it, but I want to know more about you and your what kind of got you into, and already you're sort of suggesting that your reading got you into writing that.
My life was always better when I was reading a novel. I've known that for a long time, since I was a kid. And I think that's saved me in a way. So I was a voracious reader, Enid Blyton and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then right through into my early 20s, mid-20s. But then for whatever reason, it became harder to read good novels. It's like that I lost something. It became harder to enjoy good cinema.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of why I got into doing what I'm doing. It's kind of like, one of the reasons was, it was like a question: how do I get my imagination back again?
Right. So when that question sort of came to you when you were on your psychotherapy training, or before? Right.
Before. That's partly why I signed up to train as a psychotherapist, because I thought it would help me get my imagination back.
Did it?
It kind of did, and it kind of made it worse, like the loss of imagination. So both, really.
Right.
Initially, I think it made it worse, and then that really flummoxed me, because I was just assuming it would enhance my imagination. So then it wasn't just like the question, how do I get my imagination back? It was like a refinement of that. It was like a question like, what is it about learning to be a psychotherapist that's getting in the way of my imagination coming back? Because it was kind of confusing, because I chose to train in psychosynthesis, which is a modality that very much emphasizes imagination and using images or image-based techniques, and it gives an importance to all that. And there's a lot of we were making masks and psychodrama and talking about stories and dreams and things, but how were we doing that is the thing.
Yeah.
And what was our understanding of imagination?
Well, in your book, I was quite interested to see the phrases that you use really resonated, like the colonization of imagination. And I kind of found that really interesting, actually, and resonated with me in terms of, oh God, maybe that's what I've been doing, like this kind of idea that that there's this egoic center that goes out and colonizes the rest of you, and kind of reduces everything down. Found that's just such a fascinating concept. And obviously the antidote to that is kind of what you're interested in.
Rewilding your imagination.
Yeah. So just reeling back a bit, so you've always been interested in reading, and then it kind of died off, and and going to films and things like that. So you were sort of aware that your imagination was dampening or disappearing, waning.
Yeah.
So what happened? What was the sort of journey through back then? I mean, so you knew about before training as a psychotherapist. You were interested in this idea.
Yeah, totally. I mean, through my 20s and 30s, I was very much involved in Buddhism. I joined a Buddhist community. I even got ordained as a Buddhist in '99.
Friends of the Western Buddhist
Friends
Order?
of the Western Buddhist Order, as was.
And what was your name?
I've changed the name now. My Buddhist name is Manjuka.
Manjuka.
Not a lot of people know that.
No.
Putting that out there into the podcast sphere.
I used to hang out at Buddha Fields quite a lot, and that was all the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order.
Yeah, those guys. Yeah. So they're quite big on imagination as well.
Are they?
And Sangharakshita, who set up that, has a lot of space. He's got a book called The Art of Religion. And there was a lot of time given to that. So the word imagination was definitely around in that context. But that didn't help me get it back either.
So it's interesting. I remember someone telling me about going to a lot of courses at the Buddhist Centre in Holloway Road.
Yeah.
And,
I used to teach there. Yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
And he always used to talk about he'd go to these courses and he'd sort of sit there. I remember sitting in a class with him, and he'd go after the meditation class. The teacher sort of said, "Oh, so what happened or whatever?" He said, "I got gravel."
I got
gravel. As if he was sort of aiming for what are we aiming for in this meditation?
Right.
But I don't know, I suppose I'm sort of making some connection between, I don't know, the lack of imagination.
Well, I think the problem is that in psychosynthesis and psychotherapy in general, in large part, not completely, but in large part, and also in the Buddhist circles that I was in, while imagination is valued and applied, let's say, there isn't a very clear conception or understanding of what imagination is, and that's like really important to wrap your head around.
Okay.
If you want to be more imaginative, if you want to do anything, you want to know what it is that you're wanting to do more of.
Yeah.
But imagination, for whatever reason, it's one of these slippery concepts that seems to glide under the radar, and people use it without understanding what it is.
So the word just gets thrown out as if this is it. There's an assumption about it.
Exactly. And then you're left with your assumptions.
Yeah.
And usually your assumptions are limiting of the experience.
Yeah.
So
therefore, gravel.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of went through you were at you did that.
Yeah.
You did the Buddhist thing.
Yeah.
And
I was still depressed.
And you were still depressed. So.
Long story short, I was still depressed. I was meditating hours every day.
Yeah. You got good at that.
Yeah, I got really good at that, and I was still depressed. And so some of my Buddhist friends were into psychosynthesis, particularly there's this guy called Attila, or Richard Husson. And so I found out about psychosynthesis.
Yeah.
And that was like a sort of, I was intrigued to bring in a sort of Western psychological perspective. Because I found Buddhism, it's wonderful. And it does have a psychology of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
But the practice is quite general, like be more mindful, be kinder, be ethical. I felt I needed something a little bit more bespoke.
Right.
To help me understand my particular brand of depression/anxiety. So I figured that that's what psychotherapy would bring. And psychosynthesis is interesting because it's a sort of fusion of East and West, if you like, in part. So that was the bridge from the Buddhism to... But before I got into Buddhism, I was training to be a chemical engineer, Greg.
Were you?
It wasn't me.
A chemical engineer?
Yeah, I'm a graduate of a chemical engineering degree.
Right.
Yeah. So in a parallel life, I was going to be like refining oil and stuff like that, or making beer. So I mean, but you see, a bit. So it's interesting tracing it back. So, because when I was a kid, I was, like I said, I was really interested in literature. I enjoyed like history class, but of course, being from a sort of first generation middle class family, and my dad was an electrical engineer, so I got pushed towards the sciences because that was sensible. So I spent most of university, or a lot of it, bunking off to the art house movie cinema, and reading like Herman Hesse and Jack Kerouac and
brilliant.
George Orwell. And
so you had this sort of secret life going on over there.
There was a bunch of us hanging out, and like I was even like trying to write novels and like Milan Kundera, all that kind of sort of stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there was a sort of burgeoning artistic, literary, imaginative side, but I was sort of squeezed into this kind of scientific thing that wasn't me. So I've just managed to sort of break away from all that over the years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I first met you because I'm a student of psychosynthesis as well, you know, and you were working at the trust where we're sat right now.
Here we are.
And
on the third floor.
You know, and it's certainly an interesting modality, isn't it? To model or map. Yeah. To
fascinating.
Yeah.
We could talk about that as well. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I think it gives value to the imagination and the body and feelings and thoughts. So it's not just like all about your feelings. I'm always telling my students. You're trying to bring together all these different ways of being, which is I think what imagination does, because imagination encompasses feelings and thoughts and sensations and sort of joins them up. So it's sort of a different order. That's what's intriguing about it.
Yeah. And it is interesting in terms of like what you're saying. I think, you know, especially the foundation year on a psychosynthesis training, it's kind of like a lot of close your eyes, go inside.
Yeah.
You know, walk up a mountain, find a spiritual being on top of a mountain.
Yeah.
Have a conversation.
Yeah.
Come out, draw that image, or draw whatever you see. You know, so I can see what you're saying in terms of, it's kind of promises to be a creative, imaginative approach.
And I mean, because when I did the foundation year, like, close your eyes, go inside, find yourself in a meadow. So I spent 20 minutes worrying about what a meadow is. You know, because I'm from Scotland and I'd recently just moved down to London, and we don't have meadows in Scotland. No one had ever said to me, "That's a really gorgeous meadow." So it's this culturally odd word, and I was really busy trying to imagine it properly, because the implication was it was important to find yourself in a meadow. Whereas these days I'm in an interesting position because I've sort of figured out what went wrong there, and I'm teaching, and I do present some of these techniques. But for example, I try and give a sort of loose framework as best as possible. So I would say, breathe yourself into a landscape of imagination.
That's much more open, isn't it?
It's open, and then the student or the client will find themselves in a place that's psychologically relevant, culturally relevant to them. Perhaps a place they've been before, which makes it much easier to imagine.
So it doesn't necessarily need to be a meadow. It could be like a town.
Well, that's the thing. Well, apparently, the theory goes that if you explore what they call the middle unconscious, you start in a meadow. If you want to explore the higher unconscious, you want to journey up a mountain. And if you want to explore the lower unconscious, you go down into the cave and stay underground. Which I'm open to that. being.
It's very neat,
but it seems a bit too neat to me. I think you just. I'm really interested in allowing the spontaneity of the innate imagination that's bubbling up there all the time.
Yeah.
To be discovered and interacted with, and that comes back to the decolonizing the imagination.
Love it.
It's just you want to be with the native imagery and come into a relationship as it is.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of wild imagination side, as opposed to sort of mechanistic.
Yeah.
So part of the assumption in a lot of therapy is that imagination's a machine.
Right, so that's what you talk about Freud in the book, and how Freud came up with the kind of metaphor of the steam engine, and that's kind of what was around, I guess, in his day and age, and and that there's this sort of sum of parts that you can overlay onto the kind of human psyche.
Exactly. So, because I'm living now, not in the early 20th century, his metaphors were like the cutting edge technology was steam engines.
Yeah.
Whereas these days it's all about like systems theory and deep ecology and complexity theory, and it's a much more joined up metaphor that's out there now, and there's people applying that to psychotherapy, which is really interesting, because this original sort of psychodynamic paradigm of like inner objects and resistance and pressures and like release of catharsis, that's mapped onto thermodynamics, or from thermodynamics.
Right.
So that the psyche is as if a steam engine. So it's a container, as if the unconscious is like a container, as if the body of an engine. So
us as psychotherapeutic mechanics could go in there and lift the bonnet and sort out.
So the psychotherapist is, as it were, a mechanic that can sort of lift the bonnet up, and then we perhaps isolate the broken down part of the psyche. So that's another thing in that paradigm. It's reductive. So you isolate out a single part image, you strip it away from the relationships, the context within which it exists. So you work with perhaps just one figure, if it's an image perhaps, or you just work with one feeling. But an eco kind of system perspective, it's like you're wanting to hold it all together all the time. Which fits with psychosynthesis. I think I keep going back. I'm more and more inspired by psychosynthesis as time goes by.
Well, as a moving map, right?
Well, synthesis is about, that's what synthesis means. It's about bringing together the components into an ever greater whole.
So it keeps moving.
It's moving, it's alive, and you're bringing it together. He chose synthesis to distinguish it from analysis, and that's the Freudian, like breaking things down, simplifying things into their parts. But you kind of kill them by doing that.
By locking it down.
Well, by separating something out.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Assagioli, who invented psychosynthesis, he uses the analogy of the body. So he talks about all the organs, how they work together in a synthesis. And no one part is like the center or in control of the others. And they wouldn't work separate from the others.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously if you take an organ out of the body, it's going to die, right?
Mm-hmm. So it's much more of a democratic view than a kind of or understanding
or anarchic,
or anarchic. Nice.
Well, I like an ecological metaphor. So in the jungle there are lions, and lions do eat things. So there is prey, and there is the preyed upon, the hunter and the prey. So it's kind of like, I think the psyche as an ecosystem has a wholeness and perhaps a harmony within which there are tensions and conflicts.
Gotcha. Right. So it's not always a democracy, for sure. It's,
no,
more
not necessarily.
Well, you talk about animistic. Yeah. Imagination.
Yeah.
Can you say more about that? Is that
Well, animism is, as I understand it, most simply the attribution of personhood beyond humans.
Mm-hmm.
So human beings are persons. They have a subjectivity, they have consciousness, they have awareness. So animism sees personhood, which is to say consciousness, intention, awareness, in rivers, mountains, trees, animals, puppies, flowers.
Yeah.
And in the book, I talk about different sort of like characteristics of what imaginative experience gives you or is, and then if you know what to look for, you can enhance that. And I think imagination is inherently animistic. So, for example, when you read a novel, going back to that again, what is a novel? It's wood pulp, it's ink on a page, it's a dead object, if you like, and yet as you cast your eyes over the page, you hear voices, you find
see
yourself
pictures
in the room with people, you go on a journey into a land. Same with cinema screens, they're just like screens, just lights. But it's imagination that brings it alive. Like all the Zoom calls that we did in lockdown, it's just pixels on a screen. It's just like stuff that's been dug out of the ground. And there's little postage stamps of people in all the Zoom calls that we did.
Yeah.
It's your imagination that turns that into a person.
Yeah.
It's your imagination that allows you to conceive of those lights and sounds as a living being. And that's like the example in the book that I give it is the Van Gogh painting. So I describe looking at the Van Gogh painting and the bedroom. And even though there's nobody depicted in the painting, apart from a couple of portraits on the wall in the bedroom, you can't but not think about whose bedroom it is.
Right.
And when he's coming back, or like, what's it like for him to be there? So it's like, I think there's something.
It invites something,
And the other thing is that we're trying to get back to I think that's innate, and it's there in childhood. So that in terms of like losing my imagination, I think that's just a sort of an inevitable thing that happens growing up in our culture, in our society. Children have vivid imaginations, partly because they're really embodied and spend a lot of time running around outside and getting muddy and stuff and sweaty and stuff, and also they've not been told that it's silly to think that the goldfish is cold or something.
It's so
or sad.
Difficult watching. I've got a son who's 15, you know, and I suppose it's watching that moment where it's not cool to have that type of imagination anymore. I mean, I must say,
it's like peer pressure type thing.
Peer pressure type thing.
Yeah.
You know, like there is definitely. I really resonate with what you're saying. It's a kind of like that beautiful joyfulness of childhood, the naivety, the innocence of imagination that's allowed somehow, and then whether it's kind of knocked out by peer pressure or adults or whatever, kind of like, come on, get with consensus reality. You know, it's and then it's all about like what you look like or what trainers you got or stuff. Yeah. You know, but then you know, not to say that I still see now, like, you know, he wants to be an actor, so it's kind of like wants to follow, you know, in my footsteps kind of thing, you know, and it's like, well, I'm relieved by that because it's like that's a whole world of beautiful imagination that's like a great art that you're allowed to step into another character's shoes and imagine the world that you're in on stage in that moment, you know. But yeah, so it's a kind of
you have to fight to keep it and protect it.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of see it, don't you? And sort of maybe I've got friends who've sent their kids to like Steiner schools.
Oh yeah.
And they there's a whole thing in the Steiner education system where, you know, technology, you don't even give them books until they're like 7 or older, something like that, to keep this kind of imagination thing alive. But I think, I mean, again, like with anything, any map or model, soon as it becomes a sort of doctrine or rules.
Well, certainly protecting people from technology. I think like
Yeah.
the internet's got a lot to answer for. It fragments our attention. It makes us alienated. We move away from being embodied. And you need and you need time. You need patient attention, and you need embodiment. You need sensory experience to be imaginative, and all of that gets stripped away.
Yeah.
If you're scrolling through a phone for several hours a day.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think it's something about not the need, but the kind of rush to.
Yeah, it's manic.
Yeah, to like ingest information.
You want it to happen fast. I mean, you need to take time. It's like in art galleries, like I watch people.
Yeah.
I've done it myself, so I'm not like shaming anyone, but it takes time to get into a painting, right?
Yeah.
You know, you got to look at the painting. That's why you've gone to the art gallery, presumably.
Yeah.
But what I used to do, and what I see a lot of people doing, is they maybe give 30 seconds to the painting. And then they're like, yeah. And then they spend more time reading the blurb about the painting very often.
Yeah.
Um,
so they know what it means.
And they know, well, they have an idea about it. But it's not touching you, and that's not moving. That's presumably not why. That's not why I went to art galleries, to find out about the biography of Constable or whatever. And that's the big distinction between thinking and imagining. It's like ideas and images. It's like it's that's the big thing that gets in the way. It's like we're really in a rush when you wake up in the morning. You've had a dream, and you're like, what does that mean? And you want to boil it down into an idea.
So that's another question I've got for you then. So I was talking to someone yesterday, a good friend, about she's a dream tender.
A dream tender? Wow, that's a great... Do you get paid for that? That's good.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, and
a dream tender.
And I think you've just sort of named something in terms of like we wake up in the morning and we're busy.
Yeah.
And I'm very much, I keep my phone in a different room, but I find myself going to the other room then when I wake up and have a look and what's going on and blah blah blah. Yeah. But in that way, I wonder if it's having an effect on my sort of dream. I mean, because you've written a book called Waking Dreams. What's your view on sleeping dreams? I mean, do you have a?
Well, they're different.
They are different.
Because in a sleeping dream, unless it's a lucid dream, but that's rare and that's like another topic, but it's like sleeping dream, you're entirely convinced by the surroundings, and you're there as a sort of single consciousness in the dreamscape, and it's real. You don't know you're dreaming. Yeah. A waking dream, on the other hand, or a daydream also, when you drift off into a daydream, and you don't know you're dreaming. So it can happen when you're sleeping or when you're daydreaming, and you're just in this kind of like dreamy space. You don't know what's happening. A waking dream is where you're both in the dreamscape and you're aware that you're dreaming, which happens spontaneously, naturally, occasionally. Most people will have had fleeting experiences, if they remember, of lying in bed in the morning. It can also happen when you're falling asleep and you're aware of being in a dreamscape and you know you're safely tucked up in bed at the same time.
So is that the hypnagogic state you're talking about in the book? Yeah.
So the hypnagogic state is this overlap of a physical reality, like being in bed, for example, with an imagined reality, so the dreamscape.
Is there a connection, do you think? I mean, because what I found interesting was that because I've been reading your book, obviously, and then I was talking to her, asking sort of her the same questions. Something about interpretation. So I know that you talk about not rushing to interpretation in a waking dream. It's actually like let's keep it open. Let's keep it open. Yeah. And she was very much talking about the same with sleeping dreams.
Right. Yes.
Yes. So it's kind of the temptation is to wake up and kind of go, oh well, I know what that meant. That means that I'm feel anxious because I'm running out of money. I was dreaming I was in a dentist having my teeth pulled out, and it's all a bit too obvious again, I suppose, to go to the interpretations.
Yeah, I tend to avoid them completely.
Interpretations?
Yeah.
Do you? Yeah.
I'm not interested anymore.
Wow. God, that's such a free space to be in, because I suppose even as a psychotherapist, what a temptation, huh? I mean,
well, I'll tell you what I do that you might think it's similar, but it's different, and it's a key difference. So, absolutely, if you want to have a waking dream, you can't interpret them while you're having them,
right?
Because it relies upon being in this hypnagogic state. So, while they happen spontaneously, waking dream practice is about learning the skills to recreate that space. And that allows you to explore the dreamscape at will, basically, for longer periods of time. Which allows you, as we were talking about earlier, to get in touch with that spontaneous imagery that's not implanted by some kind of template from a book or something, like a meadow. Yeah. But it's just there.
Let you come up what's coming.
Yeah. So if you find yourself in the bread section in Tesco's,
instead of a meadow.
Yeah.
Right, trust
it. You just trust that. You know, it's not like Walt Disney Dolphins or something, it's the bread section in Tesco's. Trust that, focus in on that and see what happens, see who appears and how you interact. And so while that's happening, you will have thoughts. You'll be like, I wonder what's round the corner of the bread aisle. They're thoughts from within the image, within the process. But if you have an analytical thought, I call it, like an interpretive thought, like from outside the process, it takes you outside the dream, because you'd be like, why am I in Tesco's? What does Tesco's mean? Those kind of thoughts, which are interpretations, or the answers to them would be, it takes you outside. It's kind of like you're watching a movie, and you've got a little light pen, and you're doing a review as you watch the movie.
Oh wow, yeah.
You're not going to have a satisfying experience.
Or someone sat next to you going, why are they doing that?
Yeah. Oh, that's so like Tarantino.
Yeah.
And it's like you the suspension of disbelief and the immersive experience.
Suspension of disbelief, yeah.
It's not there for you. So certainly you're not doing interpretations during the experience. You want to have an imaginative experience. But then you wake up from a sleeping dream or you finish a waking dream. Now, I could talk to you about why that's healing and transformative in and of itself, and you could just leave it there. But there is further to go. And what I do is, because it's the spontaneous imagery, this is the thing, this is the exciting thing.
Yeah.
Right? This is the magic of psyche in the world. So the imagery that you find in a waking dream, or indeed a sleeping dream, is not random. It is reflective of your current psychological life, and also the activity of images that you find yourself in everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the subtitle of the book, Imagination in Psychotherapy in Everyday Life. So images are not just in your mind when you close your eyes. Images are all around us all the time. So a broad definition of imagination is one that weaves it into perception. So how you imagine the world, the story that you tell yourself about the world, and yourself as a character in that world, is an image and an imagining. And what I'm doing, instead of interpreting in my work, is looking for the parallel imagery. So if somebody meets a dragon in a waking dream or a sleeping dream, they're not going to find a dragon behind the garden shed when they wake up or go home from therapy. But the question is, who is the dragon in your everyday life?
Yeah.
And you can refine that, and it's really interesting. And then it's like you're not explaining why there's a dragon-like person, which would be what an interpretation is. It gives you a causal explanation. What you're doing is you're helping somebody to notice, be with, experience, relate to, participate in, and possibly change, transform
Beautiful.
the relationship to the dragon.
That is exciting. That is exciting. I mean, I I suppose that I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I think the link you're making is to the fractal.
Yeah.
To looking at the fractal imagination.
Yeah.
In terms of, there's this kind of pattern that's going right the way through, on every level, which is kind of quite psychedelic as well. Actually, it's kind of an area I'm interested in.
Very psychedelic. That's your bag. Yeah.
Because it's like, well, it's like that sort of thing. If you have, if there's a theme coming through in your life, then why is it just coming through randomly in one aspect of your life?
Well, it won't be exactly.
No,
exactly.
So it's like shining a light almost into a kind of prism.
Yeah.
And it's coming out everywhere. I mean,
that's there in how I was trained as a psychotherapist. It's about looking for patterns.
Patterns, yeah.
And I always remember there's a great line, Angie Fee, who taught me, she said, how you do sex is how you do the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah, I've read that.
And I use that line in the book.
You do, yeah.
And then I think the line after that is that pulled the covers on my sex life. So it's like, but it's like how you do the shopping is how you do the rest of your life, or like how you do your emails is how you do the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like how you get up in the morning is how you do the rest of your day. And it's if you get to see that template, if you like, it's kind of like we're a stick of rock. It's like, Blackpool, Seaside Rock, or you live in Brighton, like Brighton Rock. It's like it's like no matter where you slice it, you see the same Brighton pattern.
Yeah.
So that's what a fractal is. A fractal is any image where if you focus in on a part of the image, you see the same shape as the whole image, the bigger image, like Russian dolls.
I absolutely love that, because that actually brings. I mean, because one of the things I suppose while I was reading your book was like, oh my God, there's like so much to learn here. The steps. And obviously there's probably a bit of unlearning to do as a psychotherapist if you're going to work in this way, because we have, like we were talking about children, we've been taught to think about imagination in a certain way. Yeah.
Turn it into an idea. What does it mean? Yeah. So I mean, it is a. I mean, if you can recognize. See, images are not often worked with as images. They're taken as representations for meaning elsewhere.
Yeah.
So we study the image for a little while, but then we want to know what feeling it represents, or what historical event it represents, what belief system it represents. So it's a sort of symbol that points elsewhere. Whereas working with images as images, you stay with the image. Without turning it into something else.
Well, there's a quote in your book, I think a James Hillman quote, that kind of speaks to that, right? That's kind of around.
You forsake the image or something.
Yeah, and it's kind of like this idea that, I suppose, even the language in psychosynthesis is a bit like subpersonalities.
Yeah.
So the idea that you go in, you meet this subpersonality that's like maybe a sort of wounded child or something like this, and or a wounded part of yourself, and then if you take it up the mountain, and it will change and become, rather than actually, what if it's just like a horse with a penis on its head, or a kind of strange, odd animal that.
Why do you have to make it a heteronormative person without a penis on its head?
Exactly.
Yeah. What's wrong with that kind of thing? So is it a distortion of a transpersonal quality, or is it actually wonderful and trying to communicate something to you? Yeah. I mean, that's always the tension there in that kind of work. It's like, who's trying to change who and why? And it's being sensitive to that.
So it's back to the colonization.
Back to the colonization. If you're trying to like convert all these characters that you meet, why are you doing that?
Yeah, and I guess that's it, isn't it? It's purpose? Like we have to be careful that as psychotherapists, but also as human beings, is like to, and I suppose that's kind of why we're in pretty much the mess we're in as a human race.
Yeah.
That we're sort of the egocentric, it's like, yeah, we're right at the center of this. It's about us and what we do and how we are. And it sounds like what you're doing is kind of that with the eco.
Well, I'm trying to decenter.
Decenter.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I think that's a fun word, which might seem strange because often we want to be centered.
Well,
and
individualistic
that seems to be a good thing. Yeah. But then that can exacerbate narcissism, can't it?
Yeah.
That's the danger. So it's kind of like, I was just thinking as you're talking about like travel, like an analogy to travel. It's like, do you want to travel and like live with the Bedouin in their yurts and like eat their food and be in the desert with the camels? Or do you want to travel and just like go to McDonald's and Subway and have the same food as you have at home? And like, it's like psychologically, do we want to go on a journey into the unknown? Do we want to like have a creative experience? A creative experience, which is usually a transformative one, involves encountering the unknown.
Yeah.
If you're too clear on what you want to do when you set off, it's not a creative journey.
Yes.
And you're sort of astroturfing the psyche because you're trying to banish the characters, the forces that seem to cause you in your kind of like McDonald's head kind of normie life trouble. But that just creates more neurosis, right? I mean,
It sort of reminded me of the idea of pilgrimage, and actually that there was an interesting pilgrimage that these kind of guys came up with that went from the CERN Abbas giant to the centre of CERN, the big Hadron Collider. So it's like from the big Hard-On to the big Hadron. That was their sort of journey.
Okay.
And
it's like a modern day pilgrimage.
Sorry?
A modern day pilgrimage.
Modern day pilgrimage,
yeah.
But their sort of mantra was like, they kept asking themselves, why are we doing this? and then their answer was like, well, if we knew why, we wouldn't be doing it.
Cool.
And it's sort of, I think that sort of stems from like the KLF. That was always their mantra, like, if we knew why, we wouldn't be doing it. And it's such a brilliant artistic phrase, and I think it just resonates with what you're saying.
I think it's like mystery, wonder, and awe.
Yeah.
I want to have more of that.
Yeah.
And life is mysterious, and it can be wonderful and full of awe. That's scary as well.
Yeah, but that's
the payoff. I mean, and there's an inevitable amount of anxiety if you want to open up to the mystery.
And be alive.
And be alive, exactly. But you can make that anxiety a lot worse by trying to like nail it down, the mystery. So the not knowing can really freak you out because you're sort of putting the brakes on all the time or something. But it's like if you accept that there's an inevitable level of anxiety because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you're going to die, I suppose. That's a big mystery.
You know that.
You know that.
But you don't know
how
what's
and
on the
when,
other side of that.
where and why. It's like, so it's like, for me, it's like, what's my attitude to that? How do I participate in that mystery? That's the kind of attitude I'm bringing to the waking dreams. It's like, like I don't know. It's fun to sit there as a psychotherapist and not know where it's going to go. It's like, it's like, and to trust that because it'll go somewhere.
Yeah.
If you've got experience, it'll go somewhere, but you don't know, and to not inadvertently misdirect it.
Yeah.
So I say to my students when I'm teaching, it's like you do have an agenda as a psychotherapist, because there's a sort of like, and we talk about assumptions. It's like one of the assumptions is you follow the client.
Yes. Oh my God.
And I'm like, well, what are you bringing?
It's not very collaborative.
If you're just following the client, because
Yeah.
then they just go where they went before. So there's a hesitation to have an agenda. There's a hesitation to sort of step in. So it seems to me that my job as a psychotherapist is to create the process conditions that allow something to unfold.
Nice.
As opposed to having an outcome agenda of where I think it should go.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I've got a broad idea. I know that an acorn's going to grow into an oak tree, but I don't know how high or how many branches or what style of tree it's going to be like. So I create the conditions psychologically for a person to grow, and they'll grow whichever way. And that's what I'm interested in doing, and that's why there's a process emphasis in the book. And I talk about imagination as a process, because as soon as it becomes like a content that you're outside of and you're looking back on, it's kind of like you've killed it. It's kind of like a butterfly in one of those Victorian cases.
Yeah.
Pinned
it down.
Pinned to the velvet.
Yeah.
And you can look at it through the magnifying glass. But you want to walk through the meadow with the butterflies, you know, not catching them, but like living with them.
Yeah. Or noticing the different types of bread on the shelf.
Yeah.
In the supermarket.
Yes, in Tesco's, yeah.
Yeah.
Good old Tesco's.
God, no, I mean, it's so good to hear, so refreshing, isn't it? Because, I mean, I've been teaching this afternoon and, you know, it sort of feels like the best you can hope for to give is like, you know, try and be free with yourself as a therapist, you know, yeah, exactly. If you go in there with this kind of like, I mean, clients come in, don't they, kind of hoping that you're going to collude with them in terms of like, here's this carrot, here's the stick, now let's aim towards that, let's keep going and we'll get there one day. And you both end up pretty fucking frustrated, to be honest.
Oh, that's a lot of pressure to put yourself under.
Pressure.
And it doesn't usually end up like that.
And it becomes pretty boring as well, because it's like, what, we're just doing this the whole time, and then I think burnout probably comes from that as well.
Yeah.
Whereas when I imagine part of what you do is like creating that environment for people to grow into the tree they need to grow into.
Yeah.
Is exploring that. It's kind of getting away from what.
Not to be too quick to buy into the assumptions of what they want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't buy into their assumptions.
Because usually they want to colonise the psyche or like lobotomise themselves, like get rid of feelings.
The wildness.
Yeah. So it's funner the other way.
What's your sort of concept of the unconscious then? Is this the same thing?
Well, my concept of the unconscious is that it's an idea invented by Freud to talk about the psyche. The psyche itself is a mystery. It's certainly not a thing that you can point to and measure and weigh. So, what we call the psyche, maybe we could get into that, but it's like you have to come up with metaphors, you have to come up with labels. He did start out, I think, with ecological metaphors, but he ended up with these quite sort of abstract nouns, like the unconscious, the id, the superego. It does have a lot of explanatory power. I mean, people get quite excited by the idea of the unconscious, and, you know, it has its uses. The danger is that through overuse and familiarity and an absence of alternative ways of wondering about the psyche, you can end up thinking that the unconscious is an actual thing, like a place within which resides all the psychological material that you've split off or repressed or something, as if it's like frickin' there, sort of off stage, waiting to come on. I don't think it is. No, I don't think it is. That's a story that we tell ourselves, and that's fine.
I think I've bought into that a little bit, actually. It's kind of interesting.
It's very common.
Like the shadow, the same thing. It's like all these bits that don't like about
the
ourselves.
anger that you don't like. It's in the unconscious, and it's wanting to come back in. That's a story.
Yeah,
it's an imagining. It's a way to imagine and understand ourselves and make meaning. But I don't take it at all literally, and because while it reveals things, it also conceals things. So all metaphors partly reveal something. So it's as if a steam engine, right? So the psyche is a little bit like a steam engine. It has these parts, has these forces and pressures, but it's also quite a lot not like a steam engine. So we need to have other metaphors which bring in other aspects. So what the unconscious conceals, the idea that it's all there anyway, it just needs to be sort of excavated and brought into consciousness, this repressed material, like as a sort of pressure release valve or something.
Yeah.
Nothing new is created. All you're really doing is sort of moving the furniture around. And you get into like ideas like resistance and push and pull pressures, whereas it seems to me that something is created psychologically in our work, in our lives, whatever we're doing. You don't need to do therapy. I mean, and for me, the idea of the unconscious doesn't necessarily help me understand how something's created. So like if I make a loaf of bread, you mix together flour, water, yeast, you put it in the oven. The loaf of bread did not exist
before that.
Before that.
Yeah.
It came into being as a result of bringing together those ingredients and putting them under some kind of like heat, basically. So that's a kind of ecological sort of system theory, complexity theory, understanding of change. It's like what we're doing is if we bring together more and more elements and increase the complexity and hold the tension of them being together, spontaneous emergence happens, and the system can evolve into a new form, a new expression, which wasn't there before. It's a qualitative change.
So it hasn't necessarily come from the unconscious. It's just something that's grown from or expanded from whatever. It's appeared.
Yeah. So it's not
potential.
So, I mean, you could explain it as it's come from the unconscious, but you don't need to.
Right. You don't need to. Okay.
Yeah.
I suppose that's it. Yeah. So to give it a word, where's it come from? The nothing. Yeah. Or the whatever.
It's emerged from. It's not from nothing, but from what was there before, and it's changed. Like another example I use is like walking. So it's like, if you've got one leg, unfortunately, you can hop, and that's fine. You can get around. But then if you bring another leg in, that's not just like a stronger hop. That's like a qualitative development. Walking is a lot better than hopping. And so the phrase that everyone knows is like this: the sum is great, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So it's like by bringing together two legs, you create a more complex system, which is a qualitative shift, which allows complexity and freedom and expression. So, so for me, that's synthesis again. So psychosynthesis.
Nice. So it's a sort of teleos.
Yeah, it's where you're going.
Yeah, where are you heading?
Where are you going, towards? And like where are you growing towards? And like the oak tree didn't exist in the unconscious either, so it grew, right? Yeah. So it's about language, it's about metaphors, and not taking them literally.
And when you were talking about emergence.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sort of jumping around all over your book at the moment, but it's
cool.
Sort of you get into the edge of chaos.
Yes.
You talk about the edge of chaos. So and so this is the synthesis, unpredictability, which is basically the edge of chaos. So it's I mean, that kind of reminds me of, of what you were just saying as well, in terms of like living with the knowledge of the unknown is quite scary. Is that what you mean? It's like kind of
the edge of chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's certainly uncertainty in there, and you're. It's about, well, you're expecting the unexpected, if you like. I mean, that's as far as you can go.
Yeah.
So the edge of chaos exists between chaos on the one hand, and sort of stasis or rigidity on the other hand.
Yeah.
So if things are too rigid, too fixed, stuck, there's no movement, there's no freedom for anything new to happen. Equally, if things are like too chaotic and there's no cohesion at all, then it's difficult to create something new. So it's like in between that, you're looking for a sort of sweet spot.
Yes.
So it's like we talk in therapy about safety. You need to create safety for the client. And
it's on every counsellor's website.
Yeah. We create a safe place.
Safe space.
Yeah, but nothing will happen if it's a safe place.
I completely agree. It's like it needs to be a bit more edgy and a bit like it's going to be. Yeah. It'll be safe, of course. It's a bit like, look, we're sitting around a campfire, having a cup of hot chocolate.
Yeah.
And we can, that's
well,
fine.
I think you need to begin there. So fair enough, people put that on their websites. You need to begin the journey, whether it's a waking dream or a series of therapy sessions. You set off from home, if you like.
Yes, yeah.
You don't begin at the high point of drama.
No. So we're not going to like be in the trauma forest.
No.
From day one.
Like the Grail quest begins in the stable, if you like, at the back of the castle, and you know everyone. Yeah. And then you like ride for 3 months, and then you fight somebody or something.
Yeah, and we can always come back.
And you can always come back.
You can sort of
exactly.
Back straight away. Oh look, here we are again around the fire.
It's like the safety's like but then if it's just safe, you're not letting anything new in. You're not exploring the unknown. You're not being with the anxiety that comes up when you touch on the mystery. So we begin there, but we move away from that. But we're not wanting to create overwhelm and tip into chaos. So that's the skill. It's like, how do you create the conditions where you're in between stasis and chaos? Yeah. And that for me, that focuses in on what produces change. You're creating the process conditions that facilitate change, as opposed to having some kind of stage model of developmental steps that people need to work through in sequence. Mm-hmm. It simplifies all that and sort of radicalizes it. You get to the roots of like how change happens.
Yeah, nice. It reminds me of a Bowie quote in terms of like from the artistic lens would be that actually you always need to be slightly out of your depth.
Nice.
Because if you're within your depth, that's not where the art. That's not where the art happens.
Yeah.
But also, you don't want to be like floating out at sea, panicking. So you need to. Yeah.
I think coming back to novel reading, I think novel reading is like where I build up my imaginative muscles, if you like, to tolerate being out of my depth a little bit.
Tolerate being out of your depth.
Because I think what novel reading or whatever your practice is, you need to have the ability to risk imagining alternatives to what you normally imagine. Because like neurosis, anxiety, depression, it's just about seeing the world and yourself in the same goddamn way over and over again, and really drilling down into that and getting stuck in some pretty unhelpful loops that make you kind of paranoid or whatever, or addicted or whatever. Whereas like imagination is the ability to step out of your depth a little bit and begin to see an alternative. So I talk about creating an imaginal space, and that's like the gap between what's habitual and repetitive and new possibilities of how you could be. And it's like trying to create that imaginal space.
Do you mean trying to create that as a therapist?
Within a waking dream, whether you're doing that on your own or if you're like reading a novel or in any kind of artistic practice, like visiting an art gallery. Certainly as a therapist, the consulting room is to create an imaginal space, a sort of playful, imaginative space. Because as soon as you make the story that's habitual into a story, it becomes provisional, right? It's like not the one truth anymore.
Yeah.
And that creates the possibility that there might be another way of imagining things.
Yeah.
And that's... So I'm always trying to hover around that.
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
I think I always find it through acting.
Yeah, yeah.
And improvisation.
Oh, wow, cool.
And being able to, it scares the bejesus out of me. Do you know what I mean? But it's like...
You just jump into the space and see what happens.
And the only rule is let's all be kind to each other and kind of say yes and. So it's the sort of sense of... Which is a bit like science fiction, really, isn't it? It's a bit like... Oh, yes, and this happened as well. And, oh, yes, and this, rather than kind of keep shutting it down like, oh, well, no. What do you mean? You don't go onto stage as an improviser and say, like, oh, do you like my dog? That's not a dog.
Yeah. Well, that's the analytical thing, shutting it down again. Yeah.
So if you can keep with But I notice myself in an acting class or whatever, they'll give us a scenario, and already before I've even stepped on the stage, my mind has kind of gone, oh right, you're this character and you're doing this, and then that's your thing, and I go, no, burn it down, and it's, the temptation is to pre-write the story to make it funny or to make yourself feel safe
from the outside in, kind of. You're doing it from the inside out.
Well, then if you can just get onto stage and just trust. No, I'm this character, it's much more likely to, to bring aliveness to whatever the scene is.
See, that's great. That's quite exciting. Because I think acting's a sort of paradigm. It's almost like a pristine paradigm of all this work with imagination. Because, I see all this work. I see therapy as like helping people to realise the character that they're playing in the story that is their life.
Yeah.
And helping them to begin to retell that story or reimagine who they are, what different roles they could play, and how people shapeshift, I call it.
Shapeshift, I wanted to ask you about
the thing. Like, how do you actually step into another way of being? Because you can't do it consciously, I don't think. I think that's what you're saying when you step on the stage and you're like, I've got the script, I know my character's name, and that's this very sort of conscious.
Yeah, it's wanting to aim for safety, which I guess being a human being with a personality, we tend to do, don't we?
Understandable.
Yeah. It's like, oh, maybe I fit. Well, I suppose the other thing I always see, I've worked a lot with Stacey Millichamp.
Yeah.
She talks about cults,
She published my book.
She published your book.
God bless her. Thank you, Stacey.
Transpersonal Press.
Transpersonal Press. Shout out.
And it's the this whole idea that we're in many different cults, and we're in one in our head. We're in society cult. We're in a kind of global cult, and actually, it's something about daring. Or realising, first of all, you're in one, because everything that we've been conditioned from our families through to society, whatever.
Colonised in a cult,
colonised, exactly. Yeah.
Conditioned,
And it's kind of ends up with, I don't know, fancy trainers and beige food. I don't know, in some, do you know what I mean? Everything becomes like homogenised. And so to have an imagination... or to work in the imaginal space, or as an artist, or as a human being, takes a little bit of scary edge of chaos work.
God, that's true about the beigeness. That's really landed with me. It's like everything's like
processed food.
That's scary.
I'm always worried when I realise, oh my God, all my food's gone beige. I need some colour.
But like culturally, like they keep churning out like they're just trying to do another Game of Thrones or something. It's like hardly anyone risks a new movie. It's like they're just trying to remake the old movie again. It's like it seems like less risky. It's like,
Yeah. Did you ever watch a series called The OA?
Don't know that one, no.
Oh my God. It was this beautiful, beautiful Netflix series that was about, I mean, very quickly, you know, it was about interdimensional travel through a group of people learning different moves. And if they could all come together and learn these moves, then they could suddenly find themselves in a different dimension. And they cancelled it after the second series
because they weren't getting the viewers.
They weren't getting the viewers, and it was just like, no, this is this beautiful out there series.
It was too different.
It's just too different.
They want the reliance of this worked before, so we'll get the views. Yeah. People will understand it because they like this.
Let's get zombies.
It's a bit sad.
Let's get zombies walking, you know.
Endless James Bond and zombie movies. Yeah.
So, yeah.
The shape-shifting thing.
Shape-shifting.
It's just a fun word, right? Shape-shifting.
Yeah.
I mean, don't you want to shape-shift?
Oh, yes.
It's just... I got that from David Abram. He's a big influence on me. It's difficult to say what he is exactly. I think he calls himself a cultural ecologist.
Uh-huh.
He's also a sleight of hand magician and a bit of an anthropologist. So he's written a couple of books, The Spell of the Sensuous and Becoming Animal. But there's a chapter in Becoming Animal called Shape-Shifting. And I was reading that and I thought, that's what we're doing. Because in therapy lands, you talk about imaginal identification.
Yeah.
So you in this territory that I'm exploring, like image-based work, one of the moves is enter into and become the dragon, or go and sit in the chair and become your granny or something, and look through the eyes of your granny and feel like your granny, think like your granny, or crawl around on the floor as a dragon. And that does happen spontaneously. Like I was doing a waking dream with a client the other day, and I think I can share this. I'll try not to give away any telling details, but we were in a scene and he was describing a couple of characters in the scene. So he was kind of like an observer watching the scene. And I was just creating the conditions and asking him to describe what was happening, basically. And which is the steps you can learn about in the book.
Yeah.
And then what happened was I realized that he was talking from the point of view of one of the characters. And I hadn't it suggested he did that.
He'd just gone in.
It just happened. And he started to describe the scene from the point of view of one of the characters.
Nice.
So luckily I knew that shapeshifting was a possibility, so I didn't like muck it up by saying, oh, now you've become the character.
Yeah.
Tell me what that's like, because that would have created a sort of self-consciousness.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, so I have. Oh, that's a bit strange, isn't it?
Yeah, you just want to go with it. And
so you're speaking from I.
And then just help them to describe the experience from that point of view. So I wasn't saying, for example, so now as this character, or worse, now as that part of you, which are sort of analytical terms. So I strip all that abstract language out. You just use everyday language, which keeps people in the experience. But that was a lovely example of it just happening spontaneously. Because I think you can't change identity consciously. This is where I've got to. It's often, I mean, we do it sometimes as therapists within these techniques, and sometimes it works. And I think that's because people are they're like on the edge of doing it anyway.
Yeah.
But often it doesn't work, and I think it creates a weird kind of sense in the client because they feel like they have to make it up.
Yeah.
And what you get is a sort of hypothetical story of what they think it would be like to be a witch or their granny or something.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting, but not really what you're after.
No. I mean, also, that's fascinating. I mean, I suppose the other part of it is to think about it in a collaborative way. You're shape-shifting as a therapist within that relationship as well. Right?
Yeah. Who are you? How are you being dreamed up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what can get kind of colonized through rules of engagement as a therapist. Is that, as long as you're safe and as long as you're this
beige.
As long as you sit and nod and say how did you feel every now and then it'll be fine. But don't dare to
don't go with anything spontaneous or that you don't understand or that seems a bit like mad or crazy.
So it's kind of,
that's the Wild Therapy. There's a great book, Wild Therapy by Nick Totten. Check it out. He's really good on all this.
So what's next for you? I mean, it's a wonderful book, and you must have been you're running workshops on it, I'm sure. And
I am working on the next book.
Good. Which
I'm doing very slowly.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to put too much pressure on myself because the work writing this book was like a 2-year project.
Yeah.
Nearly every morning.
That's your process.
That's what I did. I just cleared the decks in the mornings and wrote nearly every day for 2 years.
Yeah.
Took a while. I mean, I had the material and
because that was your dissertation for your psychotherapy.
It was based on a dissertation and also a lot of teaching that I'd done.
Yeah.
And other things that I'd written.
But
I don't want to lock myself into writing every morning for 2 years again.
No.
But I'm working on the book Wild Reading: How Fiction Sets Imagination Free.
Oh, is that that's the title?
That's one of them. And then the other one, because it's good to have 2 projects. Because you get bored with one and then you move to the other one.
You just sort of move between.
The other one seems to be turning into a book on psychosynthesis. And the title at the moment is A Time Between Stories. And then the subtitle is The Imagination, Creativity and Play of Psychosynthesis.
Beautiful.
So I'm doing that and teaching here at the Psychosynthesis Trust, which I love. Always learn, and it's great to participate with the students. And I'm teaching a course based on the book, like an online course, like 10 evenings.
Yeah. That's
really cool because I'm about to start the 3rd cohort. So every 6 months or so we do another round. And 2 things about that, like writing the book's one thing, and that was based on stuff I'd done before, but then as you talk about the book to people, it evolves and develops. So that's really cool. And then I've also got a little community of like waking dreamer people now.
Have you?
Who have done my course.
Great.
And we meet once a month online.
Great.
And that's the magic, because then they've read the book, they've done the course, they're doing it themselves, and we're just jazzing away and like learning off each other.
Yeah.
So I guess what's next is keeping on learning, I guess.
Staying at the edge of chaos.
Staying in the edge of chaos and reading more novels. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Really good.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, really, really good to talk to you.
Thanks, Greg. Cheers.
Cool, man. So welcome back, and thank you to Allan for that conversation. I really got a lot out of it, and I hope you did too. Some really interesting parts in there, that I guess, the bits that have stayed with me and I've been noticing since I spoke to Allan. We actually recorded this conversation just before Christmas, and the thing that's really stayed with me is actually about reading many books. I used to do it years ago, and I realised that I'd kind of got out of the habit and just started reading one book at a time. And what I've been really enjoying recently is this kind of wild reading. I think that's what Allan calls it. And So I've got a few books on the go now, and I certainly got a few books for Christmas, so I'm going to be practicing that technique of a little bit of reading one book in the morning, and then I've got a couple of books, fiction books, by my bedside, and it's just really nice to sort of dip in and out of different stories and narratives. Also, what I really enjoyed was the idea of going to an art gallery, and I haven't tried this yet, but with the idea of just being open and sitting in front of the art and letting the imagination just go off and see what happens, rather than the kind of analytical mind coming in and needing to make sense of it and understand it from that point of view. So I hope you got something out of that conversation. I certainly did. There are links in the show notes for Allan's course, and you can go to his website, and also the Psychosynthesis Trust, where he teaches. And I'll put some other little links in there as well about some books that we talked about and other different things here and there. And I look forward to you joining me for the next episode of the Emerging Purpose podcast. Until then, take care. Goodbye.